Hello, this is Eric. Today is February the 7th, 2023. And in this brief video, we're going to be talking about the European immigration to Brazil during the second reign. So here you have a picture with some of the many immigrants that came to Brazil during the second reign, right? And, this video will be complementing the previous one, which I produced and in which I could explain what the second reign was like and give you all the details, okay? So I want now just to complement that video explaining why, these people came to Brazil and what the context was for them to decide to move to Brazil and to start their lives here, okay? So we must understand first that during the second reign in Brazil, we were having an European economic crisis, right? There was overproduction going on there in Europe, okay? So the industries were producing too much, right? And much more than what the population was able to consume. That generated inventory, and obviously, the companies had difficulty to sell because of that, right? And they lost money and they had to dismiss workers. We also had, around 1848, we had, the socialism revolution, let's say, starting in Europe, right? And so that was a time of many conflicts. Aside from that, we had the unifications of Italy and Germany, right? And that, those were unifications based on lots of wars and lots of conflicts. So, those Italians and Germans, not only them, but especially Italians and Germans and other, people from other countries in Europe too, they looked to Brazil and to other nations here in South America and in the American continent in general as an opportunity for them to have a new life. Right? We also had here the coffee expansion that was happening simultaneously with all this crisis in Europe. Right? Brazil was selling lots of coffee to America, to the United States, and to Europe. Right? And you remember the reason why that was happening. I told you that, since you had the production, a very rigid production scheme in the factories, in the plants. Coffee was very useful, to help, maintain the workers awaken, right? So that's why, this drink became really popular at the time. But we also had the slavery crisis going on, right? England was putting a lot of pressure on Brazil, right, for the abolishment of slavery, not because they were the good guys, but because they wanted those slaves to become consumers, potential consumers of their manufactured products, right? And on the other hand, we had social Darwinism going on, right? We had Charles Darwin, right? He wrote, the work entitled The Evolution of Species, right? And, basically those people that were ruling the roost in terms of social theories, they grabbed this work by Charles Darwin and they created this social Darwinism, this theory that basically stated that Brazil was having a hard time and would have a hard time if it didn't change the color of the population, because the black people, they said, were inferior, right? They were not as capable as the white people, both in terms of intelligence, in terms of whatever you want to mention, right, related to labor capacity. And then, they said that Brazil should basically whiten its population, right? And that would be done by inviting, these European immigrants to Brazil and have them have children with, other the other white Brazilians here, or even the Africans here, and that would like help the nation. That would let's say soothe the problem, right? And that's a lie. That's pure prejudice. That's pure racism, right? But unfortunately, it happened at the time, right? And that also encouraged, the landowners to receive, immigrants here in Brazil. But how did that happen? Well, we had a partnership system established in 1847. This is how we began, this is how the immigrants began to work here in Brazil. So basically, we had, the Ibicaba farm, right, in the countryside of São Paulo, in the city of Limeira. And, this farm was owned by farmer Vergueiro Senator, right? And, basically, why was it called partnership? Because, these farmers would sponsor, the immigrants coming to Brazil, right? So these farmers would pay, for the trip expenses and everything else related, to the migration to Brazil. And in exchange, they would be working at the farm, not for a salary, but they would be receiving, part of the production, right? And initially in this farm, they received 80 families from Germany and Switzerland. Remember, this is the beginning of the immigration cycle in Brazil, okay? So, obviously, it did not work. It was a failure. Why? First, because the landowners were used to dealing with workers just like they dealt with the slaves. And obviously, the immigrants didn't like and didn't accept to be treated that way. Also, we had the debt of these immigrants growing, increasing more and more. So why? They came to Brazil, they didn't really have anything. So when they needed to buy food, when they needed to buy, for example, I don't know, detergent, soap, or whatever, they would go to the landowner's warehouse, right? And there, if they had money, they would buy it there directly with the landowner. Or if they didn't have money, which was most of the cases, they would become indebted, right? And, this debt would just grow and grow and grow, right? And because of all of that, we had, uprisings going on. Sorry, it's in the singular here. I meant to write it in the plural. So we had many uprisings of these immigrants that, by the way, they were in Europe and they were accustomed, to dealing with, the owners of the factories, right? And they were really radical in some cases. So they brought this, this radical way of behaving here. So we had many conflicts between these immigrants and the farmers. Well, after a while, basically they began to be compensated, right? Remunerated in money, in cash, right? And this is how, the immigration cycle started here in Brazil. We are going to have other cycles, right? And we will be discussing them with you along the videos, right? So this is basically what I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much for watching. And in our next video, we will be talking about the onset of the Republic in Brazil, right? So that's it. Take care and see you in our next video.